It's not every day that you meet someone who's a decision maker in a company that has decisively taken somewhat of a lead in disrupting how entertainment content is consumed in the world. I'm talking about Netflix, of course. My first brush with it was like so many other people with the series called Breaking Bad, the best of television content I had ever watched. Then came Netflix India, Sacred Games. Not on top of my list of OTT grades, but unlike anything that I had watched on Indian television before. But you see, that's the very thing Netflix thrives on. The divergence and even polarization of choices that its content tends to create. Nothing on Netflix is unequivocally for everyone. And just like its content, its corporate story too is very interesting. Right, Arijit?
Yeah, Anirban. As we all know, Netflix is at the heart of the FANG stocks, which is the technology bellwether of Wall Street. Just a year back, the entire equity markets in America were dismissive about growth, about profitability. Netflix was clearly running out of hits. But now, coming out of a stellar quarter, Wall Street was pleasantly surprised. 8 million new subscribers were added between April and June. Revenue shot up 17% to a mouth-watering $9.6 billion. Clearly, Netflix, as we know it during the pandemic, that growth momentum, Anirban, seems to be back.
Now, Netflix India story has been a growing, progressing piece of its vast empire, spanning 278 million subscribers, more than 7,000 originals, and tons of other films and series. And to talk about how the India story is evolving, its next episodes and seasons, we have with us Monika Shergill, Vice President Content at Netflix India. Monika is responsible for everything that you see on the Indian platform today, from the wildly popular Hira Mandi to the fantastic Amar Singh Chamkila. Lesser known fact, she likes her workplace so much that she often self-confessedly cartwheels to office. So without further ado, let's start this very special corner office conversation. Monika, welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
So you started your stint in 2019, just before the pandemic led to a boom in OTT content. Then there was a slight lull, and we had Reed Hastings saying that he's sort of frustrated with the slow success of Netflix in India. Then you touched record highs in 2023. And then now India is the second biggest market in terms of incremental paid subscribers. What do you say in your journey are the three things that have changed in Netflix?
Lots has changed. We were barely into a year of original programming in India when I joined here. We had our first season of Sacred Games, which I saw from the outside in 2018. And I joined in the back half of 2019. And within a few months, the pandemic hit, as you say. The one thing I was missing was that what are we here to do? Who are we here to be? And what is the size of audience that we are here to entertain? What is most important to us as Netflix is to have the variety and the quality. Something that no one can deliver at the pace that Netflix delivers, with the consistency that Netflix delivers, and the scale at which only Netflix can deliver. And we were not doing that earlier. We were stopping and starting. So it was a bit of a choppy start at the beginning. We had some very early successes like Sacred Games, which was a really landmark show for the Indian market. It was the first of its kind. And I heard you say you didn't, it was not at the top of,
but
and that's a fair point. Everything, like you also rightly said, is not meant for everyone, but it was a very iconic show. It completely changed the way TV was looked at, long format storytelling was looked at in India. Then Delhi Crime happened, but we also had a bunch of shows that were fairly experimental because we didn't have boots on the ground. There was an understanding which was very gradually building of who we want to be. So my first job when I came here was to really set that very clear for everyone. Who do we want to be and how do we want to entertain? and what are the creative bets that we should be taking.
When would you say you found your rhythm from the irregular bit that you spoke about?
So I think we were already working on it from early 2020. Once gradually the team started coming together, it was a journey. 70% of my team was hired during the COVID period virtually, and really getting everyone to align on the strategy and starting productions. You're also aware that productions were actually very challenged at that point in time, and for all the right reasons. But we started with our price change. I think we had titles like Aranyak, which was a very successful crime thriller for us. Suryavanshi came on the service. Minnal Murli became a very big hit on the service. And plus we had the global hit Money Heist also coming. So if you look at December 2021, it was absolutely like a step change, a radical shift in what we were before and what tone we set.
Right. You spoke about some of my favorite titles, especially Minnal Murli. So let's talk about a different kind of journey that I'm very curious about. That of content from, say, the mind of a writer or a piece of paper or an idea in the Netflix management's mind to when it lands on screen. I would love it if you gave me an example of something like, say, a Curry and Cyanide or your upcoming big release like IC814 and sort of how it came to be, and right up till the release. That would be great.
It's a very interesting journey. It's very intense in many phases. It's very joyful in many phases. And also it makes you anxious when it's like, you're bringing the baby out into the world and how is everyone going to receive it? So I can give you the example of IC814, the Kandahar hijack, since it's so pertinent and we are so excited about it. IC814 was actually one of the first stories that I was really excited about telling. I remember Sarita, who's the producer at Matchbox. Sarita and I met Captain Devi Sharan and we wanted to get his book. Sarita had already spoken to him and we were very, very keen. I was very keen that we should tell a world-class story on an event, a historical event that happened in India, where the genesis was India, the impact was in India, but also it had international ramifications. So we started with meeting Captain Devi Sharan, getting the rights of the book, and starting to develop it. And development is a tough process, especially when you're looking at a subject where you need so much research, so many perspectives, people in the government you need to talk to, and there were 4 countries across which the plane was flown. So how do you capture every bit of that story? What is the right format? I knew I wanted to do a series. How many episodes should it be? What is the right writer's room to put it together? The creator, the showrunner, what vision should it have? And then in late 2021, or actually 22, I brought Anubhav Sinha onto the project. And that's when things started moving very rapidly. As Netflix, we've been very creatively involved in the entire journey. And I'm very excited about it. I think the audiences will find it not only thrilling, but also very eye-opening in many different ways.
If I can come in here and ask you that, when you say you gave the example of bringing on board Anubhav, once it starts rolling, when the shooting starts, how involved are you? Are you there on set? Are you there when the script is being narrated to the actors, in the selection of actors? Or once it's cleared, you've green-lighted it, everything's sanctioned, you just take a back seat and let the creative guys take over? Or how does it work?
At Netflix, actually, we deeply collaborate. And I think that's one of our strengths world over. We are very deeply involved in the scripting of all our series. But when the shoot starts, it's an important time to let the organic energy of the shoot happen. Of course, we are there in a few table reads, but I think there is a time to lean in and a time to pull back. And that is a mix of art and science. And on the best storytelling, on the best projects, the way they come out, good creative producers on the side of the platform or the service, that is our attempt to be supportive, but also to know when to let go. And of course, we get more involved when the edit process begins. And it's not just the creative team from the service side, which is involved on the edits, but it's also post-production team, our VFX teams. In fact, our VFX teams support our creators in a very, very big way because we do not have that kind of VFX know-how in the market. And even many of our creators haven't experienced the level of VFX that is happening across the world on Netflix projects. So we have our own internal studios like Eyeline and Scanline, where we have the best of VFX, technicians, and our own VFX teams is very deeply involved with the creators in supporting them to bring this out.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I wanted to ask you, a little personal. I don't know how many people know this, but before joining Netflix or, joining other production houses, you actually also dabble with journalism.
Yes.
And one of the things that you got involved in terms of, while you were a journalist were coal mining or the illegal coal mining that used to take place in Jharkhand, Bihar, and other areas. I mean, since you're talking about something which is of a political thriller, this is quite thrilling as well. I mean, when do we see that story on Netflix?
I hope I'm able to do that story sooner than later. It's fascinating that you mention it. It was one of my first long format journalism pieces.
Correct.
Before that, I was interning, so I was doing short feature type of stories, but Dhanbad was one of my first big stories. And I still remember sitting on that hot rock with the fires burning around. And it must be on one of the VHS tapes, that story. I don't even have a VHS player to play it. But we are really very keen to tell all kinds of stories that matter. And I think if you just look at the slate that we are putting together as Netflix India, if I look at Mamla Legal Hai, which is everyone told us, like, this is not a Netflix story, or kind of a show that Netflix should be doing. Patparganj Court and the kind of, the characters and the humor, very different from what people feel Netflix is. But I think Mamla tells you, we are that also. Kapil Sharma tells you that we can take a show which is linear format comedy show, upscale it to a Netflix audience and really deliver a weekly entertainer which is meant for all the families to co-view. So all of this put together reflects what we want to be as an entertainment service and how we want to be your Netflix, be my Netflix, and so many people's Netflix.
But how do you gauge the success of content on OTT? Because there are so many different dynamics and constantly evolving ones as well.
Success on streaming is a function of many things. Of course, there are internal metrics, and we really believe in being transparent about metrics. We've realized that more and more the industry needs to understand, everyone needs to understand what does success mean when you say something is a streaming success. And no one has a common metric to decide what success is. For us, success of the service depends on engagement. I think streaming is all about engagement. How many people came in, how long did they watch for, and how many completed something. So that is very, very important to decide the success of a title. And also as a service, success truly means, a streaming success means having high engagement, sustained engagement, delivering revenue, and having profit. That is what defines the success. And I think the industry needs to move to a more rigorous definition of measurement and not be so casual about what a view means, what a view hour means. Currently, there's a very casual, so many million people viewed something. There is not even an understanding, and we are again doing something which TV has done, and because TV has done because of its challenge. You cannot tell the absolute number in TV because in television, you cannot measure the absolute number. Streaming gives you an absolute science to measure. You know that you can. So when you actually speak to a few hundred people and say, do you know about this? Did you watch this? And it is seen, yeah, I know, or I watched. No one likes to say, oh, I didn't, or I didn't know. When you take that as an absolute measure of whether something is successful or not, that's very dangerous for the streaming industry in general as a business.
Why hasn't it happened yet? I mean, in television, linear broadcast, you had TRPs, then you have BRC data. There's some agency that supposedly independent third-party audit that happens week on week. I mean, nobody can now say that this is a fledgling industry. This is, just very, very new. OTTs have literally taken over. So why don't we have a proper scientific way of measuring data, which is acceptable to all stakeholders, all streaming platforms?
Yeah. I think it's not happened the world over yet. So as Netflix, as the streaming pioneers and leaders in the industry, we have started leaning in and being more transparent. And we share our engagement report, which is shared twice a year. And we every Tuesday, we share the top 10 list, both the global English and the global non-English list. So we are very forthcoming with our data to even our partners.
So you rightly said that it's become far more complex. And I have some numbers here, like revenues from streaming services are 1.5 times that of theatrical box office releases. And investments in local original shows and series now represent over 50% of entertainment spends on pay TV. And I'm excluding sports and movies, of course. Now, with such high stakes, is there a pressure to sort of experiment lesser or be less daring than you were when you had started out?
At Netflix, the pressure is always to innovate, never to stop innovating or experimenting. And I think that's what has kept the mojo going for us as Netflix. Even when we had a slump a year ago, the fact that we turned around so fast and we launched our ad service in 12 countries, we kept doubling down on games, we added live to the mix, all of that so fast. Aside of everything that we do on the entertainment side, in terms of the kind of titles and stories that we've brought out, like Baby Reindeer has been a breakout. Hira Mandi for us has been a breakout. For us, it's really about constantly innovating to tell more and better stories, newer stories, and also to create the kind of experience for the members.
Sure. But as viewership dynamics change from mobile devices to connected TV and more family viewing. And of course, stuff like Kapil Sharma is our natural pivots. But, with changing choices, when I said pressure, can we expect a refreshingly raw and uncensored show like Sacred Games going forward? Because, are people more accepting of that? Or is there a pressure on Netflix to cater to those choices or changes in those choices as well?
There is no pressure on Netflix to be one thing or another. For us, it's really important that we program for the whole spectrum of audiences. We have the absolute core audiences, the very first Netflix adopters in the market, and going wider and wider to an audience is also very important because that is where the continued growth and momentum is. So I think we will always tell stories which are meant for specific audiences, and then there will be stories and formats that are meant for everyone.
So while choosing content, your mantra still is what Ted Sarandos gave you, which is gut, data, gut, right? Is that what you still follow?
By the way, I absolutely love that mantra. And I had read about that mantra, just like you, even before I joined Netflix. So storytelling is always about gut. Storytelling is not about a math. Data can only inform about audience taste preferences. It can only tell you what size of audience potentially a crime genre can give you, or a romance genre, or a thriller, or a non-fiction format. But it can never tell you what is the next amazing idea, what is the next favorite film or series that an audience will absolutely fall in love with. And data can never tell you what is a global show or a film.
So how does a Gentleman click outside of UK? How does a Squid Games click outside of South Korea? How does Hira Mandi get exported to around the world? How do you keep the balance between local and taking that local and making it international? I mean, that's because, as you said, cultural resonances, cultural references, it's different. So how do you make that local content truly global?
And is there a pattern that you've sort of gauged now as to which one will become famous globally, like Hira Mandi did in 43 countries, I think?
71.
Oh, great.
Wow.
Thanks for that update, yeah.
So, I wouldn't say a pattern because actually we don't have... One of the finest things about streaming is that you don't see patterns. In fact, the minute you see patterns, the patterns have to be broken because audiences are experimenting so much. They're watching so much. So it's very important to know that how something travels on Netflix is by itself a very fascinating thing. At the creative end, you have to create something which is very local and very authentic. If Squid Game had been less Korean and trying to be more Hollywood, it would have cracked neither market. It would have not won in Korea and it would have not won the world. When a home country delivers a hit, that's when it really kicks in, the recommendation, and that's when the juggernaut kicks in. At Netflix, the way we roll out a story on product is equally as fascinating. So we have all of these different kinds of key arts, what you see as thumbnails. So you will receive a different kind of a thumbnail. You might get a different kind of a thumbnail of the same show. We make multiple thumbnails, which are key arts actually, because your preferences, your content preferences could be different. So a different element in the show might actually excite you. But we try to be authentic to the story and to what are the important elements in the story so that we reflect all those elements in the key art that we do. And for Squid Game, the key art that really traveled was the masked key art. Same way for Minnal Murli, the key art that helped it travel across so many countries was a superhero in a lungi, which is so unique to India, and as a superhero, something that you've not seen. So when you're culturally specific, locally nuanced, and there are themes that talk to everyone, and the product kicks in, it becomes a hit locally, that's when it appeals.
But here I have a follow-up question, which is the algorithm perhaps will work better if you're watching on a device which is exclusively yours. Like if I'm watching content on my mobile or on my tablet. But how will the algorithm work if it's on a connected TV where the family is watching? How will the algorithm then pick up the parents as well as the kids' preference? Along with that, I want to understand, how is India watching Netflix? Is it more on mobile devices? Is it more on connected TV? Is it more on tablets? I mean, what's the viewership pattern like?
In India, mobile viewing is very high. But for Netflix, the 10-foot experience is very important. We create for that 10-foot experience. And as we've gone along in our journey, we see more and more people actually signing up for the TV plans. So more and more people are actually enjoying Netflix on their television sets. And to your first question,
which is like, I mean, when it's a experience which is you're watching it on your mobile or your some other smart device, it's easy for the algorithm to understand or gauge my viewership pattern, my likes and my dislike. But when it becomes a family viewing, then how does the technology of Netflix understand what the family wants to watch?
Yeah, very interesting question. So we have the profiles for that, right? But when there is co-viewing, let's say something like Kapil Sharma show, which drives a lot of co-viewing, it would be seen from a certain profile, right? So whoever's profile it is being seen from will also have those kind of recommendations coming more to them, which is comedy. And on each title, we have tens of tags, like up to 100 tags, perhaps in certain cases. And these meta tags at the back end of a program actually help you, when there is search, when there are preferences, recommendations, it helps a person choose, and it helps the recommendation engine to actually surface the right title for a person.
You talked about, if I can use the word, the hybrid model, like you've brought in advertising at one tier and subscription the other tier. You're experimenting it with 12 markets. What about India? Do you think a market like India is ripe for that kind of a dual strategy, or it's still not there yet?
Speaking for Netflix, it's a bit of a down the line strategy for us, not something which is currently happening or anything I can update on. In the market per se, if I just look at the streaming world, ad-supported has been around. I have worked on an ad-supported platform when I launched the previous digital platform at Viacom Voot that I was working at. That was ad-supported. But at Netflix, we want to perfect our ad tier in the 12 markets that we are currently in. We are scaling up very well. We are ramping up in the US market. We have 2 markets in Asia, Japan and Korea, where we are also there. India is, like I said, a little down the road.
I'll bring you back to the bit about cultural nuance and Minnal Murli. One recent example is Maharaja, which is a gem of a film. In a recent interview, you had said that every country wants to see their own stories. And now it's more complex in India, which is many countries in one, right? So what I'm alluding to is, regional content. How happy are you in the way that this piece is evolving? And would you want it to evolve faster in terms of, building that library, etc.? And how are you doing that?
I think the best thing that streaming has done within India, I would say, is to actually bring the North and South audiences together to really appreciate cinema and stories as such, irrespective of where the story is coming from. At Netflix, we often say that a story can come from anywhere and entertain people everywhere. And I think during the pandemic, this was a dramatic shift that happened. When streaming happened, access happened. People were at home. They saw a lot of content. They saw content in other languages from across the world. So there was no reason why they wouldn't see their own stories from the south of India. And that kind of set off this love and appreciation. So now where we are, I think as Netflix, we were a little slower in the beginning. Because for us, it was really important to get our strategy right for the Hindi market. And then we kind of decided there was a point in time when we knew that we were really beginning to deliver to our Hindi strategy. And when Netflix moves, it moves really fast. And there was a point in time when we announced that we are going to start building our South slate. This year, we announced the 12 big blockbusters, Telugu blockbusters, which will be coming, and 9 Tamil big films. And our development is on for the originals. We are very deep into writing and producing some of them. So by next year, I think we will be in a good space to roll out some South originals also.
But, you talked about the Southern slates. When it comes to, the new frontiers or the new challenges, of course, there's no doubt Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Bengali, these 4 seems to be big pockets of content, regional content. But would it be also a personal mission to look at other languages, Gujarati, Punjabi? I'm sure, they have their own cinema as well. Do we now see more of those content in those languages also coming up the way maybe the Southern slate has emerged?
And just to add to that question, is production infrastructure a deterrent to you going to those far-flung places where you can get great content?
Not at all. Production infrastructure is not a deterrent to us for storytelling. Like I said, we've shot in Bihar in the middle of COVID for Khaki, the Bihar chapter. We've shot Chamkila in the heart of Punjab. We've shot Kora in Punjab. Our next series, Khaki, the Bengal chapter, which is the season 2, is set in Bengal. So there are languages like Punjabi and Bengali and Marathi, which we feel we are also catering through our Hindi programming because we are setting the stories there. How we want to talk to those audiences is by telling stories from those markets, from those language markets, having characters that you can, like Scoop is a classic example of that, where it was around J. Day's murder, a Gujarati journalist, and J. Day being a very senior Bengali journalist in Delhi. So there are stories that, India is one whole. And how do we tell stories from every part of the country? And infrastructure-wise, I think down south, filmmaking is, probably sometimes I feel even better than north, where there are lesser studios and technicians.
I also wanted to ask you, one other remarkable thing that OTT platforms have done, like Netflix, is create a whole ecosystem of, dubbing artists and the whole, in different languages that you dub a particular film or show. Also subtitling. And there's also stuff for, the guided versions of the languages that you have. How is that evolving?
I personally feel that subbing and dubbing has been the secret superpower of Netflix in the way that it's really made our stories travel. We sub and dub in 37 languages. And if I have to give you an example, like Hira Mandi, there is more subbing done, more subtitling done. And dubbing is on the rise now. Hira Mandi, we dubbed in up to 13 languages. And 8 of those languages were international languages. IC-814 Kandahar Hijack has been dubbed in 8 languages. As we realized that a title is tracking like Gangubai, once we realized it was doing so well in Thailand, we actually had Thai dubs. It has not just helped create an ecosystem of very talented people, a new stream of work in the entertainment space where dubbing artists are there, subtitling artists who are writing out the scripts and for the subtitles, being very authentic, being very true to the language and getting the essence of something and translating it for the right emotion and context to happen. So I think subbing and dubbing is something which is at the heart of Netflix stories traveling.
You spoke about moving fast, and just an aside, wouldn't it be easier for you to acquire a regional, smaller OTT platform to have access to their library instead of taking that much time to build your own? And I'm talking about regional films and content, of course.
No, that's a great thought. It's not that we haven't considered it, but there is a certain ambition that we have and a quality that we want to bring on Netflix as branded originals. And for us, it always works to really create ourselves first and to understand the dynamics of the market. How we are as a business model is to also experiment and learn ourselves so that we are always a creative house first and besides being a service. And we are already, like I said, engaging in the buying of cinema.
Creative house, of course, because $17 billion is your content budget. I mean, I think all big Hollywood studios put together would probably have 60% of that as their annual budget, and you haven't revised it downwards. If India is such a powerhouse of content, can we expect, and now that you're saying, you have a full team in place, the whole, you've got your India, the mojo is back. Would it be wrong to assume that over half of that 17 billion would be plowed into India content?
Half of that? That is actually, honestly, if I can say this, that's very preposterous to even suggest. Okay. And I will tell you why. Because we program all over the world. At the top of the conversation, you yourself said that we are 278 million subscribers all over the world. No studio in the world or entertainment service in the world has ever programmed for that many people in that many languages that we program from so many different countries and locations around the world. Within that, every country has more than its fair share of budget. So I think we have a very robust budget for India. We are invested in a very deep way in India for a very, very long road ahead.
Would you share that budget with us?
When we had entered the market, we used to share the budget. And then we realized that is so pointless. Like, there is no point talking about budget figure as such, because we are in the business of storytelling. And like I said, from a budget standpoint, we are taking all the interesting and exciting and, how should I say, anxiety-inducing sometimes bets that we need to take.
On budget, and also harking back to your mention of Kalki, is it a concern that theaters are filling up again, cinemas and theaters? This is a game that OTT platforms like Netflix had disrupted, right? And I'm talking about a two-pronged concern. One is, of course, competition, because people are going there more. And the other is the bigger hit a film becomes, the more expensive it is to acquire, and your content costs aren't going down soon, and that sort of hampers margins. So how do you see that?
Very interesting and pertinent question. And I want to, hopefully through your podcast, once and for all clarify that OTT did not disrupt theatrical business. It's the pandemic which disrupted the theatrical business. And I'm very happy that cinemas are back in the game, and there are films that are becoming hits. As a habit, there will be stories. that audiences will watch on streaming services, and there are movies that they'll want to watch in theaters. So I don't think that we are competing in that sense, or that a film which doesn't do well in the theater does well on the service. That's another myth that I want to bust. A film that does well in the theaters also does well on streaming.
Right. One more question about another concern. You spoke about this whole family viewing versus, individual viewing. The entry point is still very, very personalized. And that brings us to this whole hyper customization of subscriptions, right? Because, I know of many of my friends who subscribe to Netflix only for one show and then they will cancel their subscriptions. While that brings you volumes, isn't revenue a problem? Because that's the figure that you are going to share more and more.
It's not a problem for us in the sense that our business model works on really working hard and giving more and more reasons to our audiences to come month on month. And for us as a service, like I said earlier, it doesn't work for us to be a highly subsidized annual service.
Sure.
This is not something that we don't discuss internally. I often give this example of a gym membership that you sign up for. If you have the membership, you'll be like, okay, I'll go next day, or I'll go next month. You have it. And after a while, it'll start pinching you that you're not using it enough and why you signed up for it. Maybe you should cancel it. For us, it's very important to give our members that ease, that it's in your hands. The choice is in your hands. The responsibility is ours to actually make you want to stay on Netflix.
That stickiness that you're talking about, would sports be the obvious next frontier for Netflix to conquer? You already started. You had a deal to show 2 NFL matches in Christmas, the Mike Tyson boxing matches. Then you have the WWE. Drive to Survive has become a cult among Formula One lovers. India craves for sports as well. Is the secret sauce, therefore, sports?
I think sports world over is something that is seeing a resurgence in terms of viewing. As Netflix, we've done brilliant sports adjacent storytelling. We are into narrative sports in a very, very big way, and not just Drive to Survive, which was the first one, but Unchained and so many others, documentaries like Beckham. They have totally changed the game. Even live, like you said. But are we going to get into the sports leagues in a very big way? Internationally, we've begun, like we have the NFL games, but there isn't a plan as such to go as deep and big in sports immediately. But India, I can very safely say that we are expanding our entertainment portfolio. It's working brilliantly for us. You have seen the momentum of growth. And if I were to even refer back to your earlier question of audiences signing up for one and then going, I think the way we are planning our entertainment portfolio and the momentum and the pace of growth we are seeing, we are always adding more people than would actually probably take that decision to move out.
That's I think it. Thank you, Monika, for joining us on the Morning Brief. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been so wonderful talking to you. Thank you for having me here.
That's it for today. You were listening to this corner office conversation only on the Morning Brief. This episode was produced by Vinay Joshi and Surohini Jain.
It was sound designed by Indranil Bhattacharjee.
The Morning Brief drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday on a listening platform of your choice. Thank you. Keep listening. All external clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description.